All right. I'm back here now. All right, I can hear you. Excellent. Great. Not sure if that was for the previous one or current. But anyway, it's all shaded now. So anyway, let's try this again. See if people can hear me. There's one person there, two people there. Can you hear me? Let me know. Send me a comment. Let me know that you can hear me, please, so I'm not talking to myself. I really don't like hearing myself speak, but I've gotten a lot more used to it as I've done more and more videos. So can you hear me? Send me a comment, please. Let me know. Make sure this is working. I wish my slides were working. But that's all right. We'll work with it. Can you hear me? I'm going to talk about real estate assessments. Let me know that you can hear me. Would love to get some questions too. I've got a few, which I'll answer. But wanted to get you put together some information first. Let me know. Can you hear me? That. Can you hear me? Yes, no, maybe so. Let me know if you can hear me. Is there sound now? I should play music. Can you hear me yet? Let me know. I want to just talk to myself. I wish these slides would work. Can you drop me a comment if you can hear me? That would be great. I'd appreciate it. Got 6 people there. Eight already. That's good. I guess some people are interested in this. Taxes aren't the most exciting thing, but we're going to start talking a lot about those between now and April 15th or so. And of course, your real estate taxes, they went out quite a bit. Am I just talking to myself, or can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let me know. Can you hear me? There's 10 people on there. Yes, no. Who can help me? Can you hear me yet? Not sure how to check this without causing other issues. That is not meant to be. All right, I'm getting some thumbs up, I guess. Maybe you can hear me. So let's try this. Turn that brightness up. No, weird. All right, so I'm hoping that you can hear me now. There's 12 people out there. Norman, can you hear me? You said I've got 1 minute. I want to share a little bit about recent history. In 2020 was kind of when things kind of went crazy in real estate. And I wanted to review that a little bit so you'll have a better understanding on what happened with real estate assessments. And then I'll get to answer some questions. So back in 2020, obviously, we saw the pandemic happened, and shortly thereafter, real estate took off. You know, a lot of people were expecting real estate to crash, and I looked at a bunch of things sort of in the background and knew that the economy in 2020 was not the same as it was back in 2008, because everybody was expecting a retraction of 2008. But I actually made some videos back in April, and then I did a sort of a review of it in December. And you can find those at 804michael.link/2020 if you want to go look at those later. But anyway, we saw real estate basically took off in October of 2020. We recovered a lot quicker. Real estate took a pause basically between April and October. Still things sold. Prices were relatively stable, actually went up a little bit. But in October, things really took off. And with that, some things that helped that maintain its speed for so long was a reduction in a continued low interest rates. So that's kind of the background of what happened in real estate. And so for the last 2 years, almost 3 years now, we've seen a phenomenal jump in real estate values. I put together a chart in January 2021. Our sales, the average sales price in January 2021 was $349,300. As of December 2022, that average has jumped to $485,349. That's the average. So it's jumped 38.9%. That's a pretty significant jump in year over year. Basically, January 21 to December, over 2 years, it jumped almost 40%. In the last 3 years, we've seen almost a 50% jump and that's just sales value, prices, average sales prices. So regarding real estate assessments, I know a lot of people are kind of angry at more at the increase in the tax than what is, the sort of real estate value. One thing you have to understand about real estate assessments is the Code of Virginia says that that a real estate assessment is supposed to be at 100% of the fair market value. So what does that really mean? What is fair market value? Well, it's not really defined in the Code of Virginia, which is a bit troublesome. And there was believe it or not, there was a Supreme Court case in Virginia in 2020, where it was a dispute between some family members on fair market value. And the court didn't come up with a good definition there either. But generally, fair market value is assumed to be the price that a willing buyer would pay a willing seller for a home in an arm's length transaction in an open market given a reasonable amount of time. A lot of gibberish there to say that if we put it on the market, if we put a house on the market, what would it sell for? Assuming we're not selling to a family member or somebody we know. That's considered the fair market value. When it comes to real estate assessments, the assessed value, while the state law says it's supposed to be fair market value, it's often a little bit behind the fair market value, believe it or not. So when I'm working with people to help buy or sell real estate, a lot of times they will look at the assessed value and they think, oh, I'm not going to pay any more than the assessed value. Well, the property is probably worth a little bit more. When was the last time the county came into your property and evaluated what it would sell for? Probably never. Probably have never been to your property. They probably haven't even driven by it. So then that becomes the question of, well, how do they adjust the assessments? And typically the counties hire outside firms to put together valuations for the county, and it's based on comparable sales. And then I'm sure they're doing this 6 months ago, so a lot of times it's at least 6 months behind. it takes a while to compile all that data. But that's basically what the assessed value is supposed to be. It's supposed to be your fair market value. Is it? No, like I said, it's usually a little bit behind. So what do? That was some people have said they would love to be able to sell their house for the assessed value. And the truth is, you probably could. In fact, you probably could make a nice profit on your home if you've owned it if you bought it a year ago even. Now, real estate market has softened a little bit. Values have softened a little bit. I'm not seeing a retracement in values necessarily. I think some sellers are asking a little too much for their properties out there right now. One of the telltale signs is we have a lot of new home construction in the Ashland area, Richmond area, all over, and I'm actually seeing new home builders pull back on their prices a little bit. They're giving some discounts. I just had a client purchase a new home construction. We just went under contract, and the builder was offering $4,000 off of what the sales price was 2 months ago. So we're seeing some of that. So what do you do about, what can be done about your assessment, and how can you get relief? Well, if you read your notice, it talks about appeal of your real estate assessment. And that's really the only relief that the county kind of gives you. But I was going to tell you that there's two other ways that you can get relief. One, you have to meet some pretty stringent requirements, but I think there's a second way that, especially given numbers of people, that with that we might be able to see some adjustment in the assessments. Well, I should say you're not going to see the adjustment in the assessment, because that's, I think, the challenge. People think that the way is to look at the value of your property and reduce the value of the property. That's not the right way to approach it, but let's talk about that, what that means. So the county says you can appeal your assessment. So starting basically when we got the notices, January 3rd, through the end of January, January 30th, so not the 31st, I'm not sure why that is, but through the 30th, you can call the assessor's office and discuss your assessment with them. Now, I'll tell you, I can send you the notes. I'll send you a link. I'll give you a link to get these notes and get this information. But you can call the assessor's office. But chances are, unless your assessment is like grossly out of whack, calling the assessor's office isn't really going to matter a whole lot. The next thing you can do is, if you miss that informal appeal time, or you really want to just kind of stand in front of a board of reviewers, you can do a formal review. Now with that, you have to put together some paperwork, fill out a form. Again, I'll send you a link to these notes, and it has links to the forms and stuff like that. And you have to file that by March 15th. And then sometimes about a month later, they'll start scheduling those appointments, and you get in front of the the board of the board of equalization. Usually it's a real estate agent, a appraiser, and somebody else that's been appointed by the circuit court. So you can do that formal review. You've got to submit some paperwork with it. I've been through one. It's been one of my times where I actually did get a assessment reversed or reduced a little bit. It wasn't substantial. We had some really good data. I thought that we could get probably a $30,000 to $50,000 reduction, because again, what's fair market value? It's what you would pay at an arm's length transactions, and these people had just closed on the property. We only got about 10% of reduction of what we thought we were going to get. So it wasn't very profitable to even go through the formal review process. But we did that. It took about 15 minutes, and they send us a determination later. The third option that you can do, if you go through the informal process, you don't get a resolution there. If you go through the formal review process and you don't like the resolution there, then you can file a case with the Circuit Court of Hanover. I've never heard of anybody doing that. You'd have to have some real compelling information, and chances of you obviously going to probably hire an attorney to do that. It's just not going to, chances of the assessment being adjusted is pretty slim if you get to that point. So I think the second sort of option that people have when it comes to assessments is if you, like I said, meet a strict criteria, and that's really applying for tax relief. The challenges with applying for tax relief is you got to be 65 years or old or older, or totally and permanently disabled. So that's one criteria. You've got to be the owner or partial owner of the property. You've got to live on the property. Your gross combined net income can't be more than $55,000, and that's the income of relatives other than the spouse living in the house. They're included in that $55,000, and your net worth has to be less than $300,000. Now, chances are most people don't fit all those criteria. They might fit one or two, but maybe not all of those. So the third thing is I want to pay attention to, if you look at your assessment, got your sheet out here, you want to look at the tax rate. And you'll notice if you look on a 2023 column, the tax rate says 0.81, and then there's a little star next to that. And that little star is very important because what it indicates is that the levy rate or the tax rate for real estate taxes has not been determined by the Board of Supervisors yet. I believe that's due to go out on April the 5th. The Board of Supervisors are meeting to, is that right? I can't remember. Yes. There's a public hearing on April the 5th, which is when the Board of Supervisors are going to discuss the levy rate. And of course, it would be wise to be involved in that discussion, because that's where I think that we can see some relief on taxes. Because if you've read over your notice, you'll find that by law, the county has to send out these notices, number one. And number two, they have to use last year's rate to determine what your taxes might be. It gives you an idea. And so if you look at, you've seen an increase of 16.47%. That's what mine is, which is a lot of money. That's a huge amount of cash to come up with extra. So I think our good opportunity to be able to see some relief from this is not to go after getting your assessment reduced. Because again, your assessment is supposed to be at the fair market value. Chances are your assessment is actually a little bit below. I worked with somebody one time, I was talking with a seller, and they actually went to appeal their assessment, and they actually asked for the assessment value to go up. And of course, the county was happy to say, sure, we'll charge you more in taxes. Not sure why they did that, but they were kind of at the belief that their assessment value should be higher. I said, you just kind of shot yourself and the next owner in the foot, because you're getting charged more in assessed value. So that's not, so you might be opening up a can of worms and talking to the assessor's office, or doing the formal appeal process. Now, if you really think that your value is off, I'm offering free consultations with people. You can send me a note. I'll give you a link to a little form that gathers a little bit of information. 10-15 minute phone call, and we can discuss whether I think it's worthwhile or not for you to appeal your assessment, so you don't open up that can of worms and calling the assessor. But I think that the real option for people to look at getting their taxes lowered is to have the county board of supervisors reduce that levy rate. Both Henrico County and Chesterfield County both reduced their levy rates last year because of the steep increase in home values. And there's nothing to say that they can't, Hanover can't do the same. I saw a post the other day online. One of our former board of supervisors was talking about this sort of idea as well, and he promoted that there's a restriction in the Code of Virginia that real estate tax assessments can only go up 1% without going through this hearing process. Yes, I'll talk about that. So it can only go up 1%, but that doesn't. So the adjusted levy rate at a 1% increase should be 0.71, so almost a dime in reduction. So that's where I think the key to people seeing some reduction in taxes is to go after that levy rate. So I'm encouraging people to contact your Board of Supervisors representative. If you don't know who that is, again, in the notes I can send out, I'll post. I've got a link to how to find out your Board of Supervisor and also the contact information for your Board of Supervisors, because that's going to be your key in getting any reduction in prices. So let's go to some questions. I had some questions that people submitted beforehand, and one of them, Haley, you're one of them. You said, if your land is zoned for agriculture, will that lower your real estate assessment taxes? Well, it will adjust the assessment value a little bit, because it really depends on how much land you have. That is going to adjust, that can adjust the assessed value. The tax rate doesn't change. The tax rate is the same for regardless of how your property is zoned. Does that make sense? So we just have one rate for real estate. Haley, you also had asked, I think it was this, at least Haley asked, when are assessment amounts paid out? Who are they paid by? Well, this is an interesting situation, because assessments, the taxes are always the homeowner's responsibilities. Now, most people probably have a loan on their home, and with that loan, you have an escrow account. So as soon as these weren't bills, but these were just assessment notices. But when the bill comes out, and it probably won't be out until I think May. I think June is when they're first due. So we probably will see bills in May. That would make sense with the time frame. If they set it in April, May they'll send out the bills. June they'll be due. The assessments are generally paid out by your escrow account. But if you don't have an escrow account with your loan, then it's your responsibility to pay them. I mean, it's the homeowner's responsibility regardless. But if you have an escrow account, the bank will generally pay those right as soon as the bill comes in, even though they may not be due for another month or so. So that's how they're paid out. Like I said, you as homeowners still have responsibility, but they're often paid by the lender. Somebody asked previously, how is my house assessed? And is the land value separate from the house? But typically, it's not an exact science, but what I've found, the kind of general rule of thumb with tax assessments, if you look up in your county records, you actually have two assessed values. You have your land value and you have your improvement value, and together becomes your assessed value. So yes, they're two separate kind of fees, if you will. They're two separate values. Again, they're both taxed at the 0.81 cents per hundred of value. So the land value technically is separate and broken down. It's usually about 20% of your total assessed value. And that can go into, I could go into a whole can of worms with that. I won't bore you with that. Again, if you have any questions about real estate, feel free to reach out to me. My phone number is 804-642-4235, or the easy to remember version is 804-Michael. There was another question that I received previously. It says, I don't believe the county takes into account unfinished square footage. Well, the county has record of all of your finished square footage and your unfinished square footage. So they typically, home value, the value of a home is much more dependent on finished square footage versus unfinished square footage. So that's kind of, like so my house is technically, I think, 2,547 square feet, let's say. But that doesn't include my garage, because really my house is closer to 3,000 square feet if you include the garage. But typically square footage is only considered as the heated and air conditioned space. Or I should say just heated space, because air conditioning is not required. So heated square footage. So I'm generally taxed, my value in my real estate is more at the 2,500 square foot versus the 3,000 square foot. But things kind of get considered in there. So what other questions might you have about real estate assessments? Like I said, I will post in the group a link to the little PowerPoint that I made, and you can look through that, and also some notes, some brief notes on how to appeal your assessment. Or, like I said, I think the best way to look at your real estate assessment is to look at the tax levy rate and contact your Board of Supervisors representative and encourage them to reduce that levy rate. I think that's going to be the best avenue for people to make a change in their taxes. So, any other questions? I'm happy to hang out here for a little bit. Or like I said, I'm a local real estate broker. My name is Michael Hottman, by the way, if you didn't know that. And my phone number is 804-642-4235, or the easy to remember version is 804-MICHAEL. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I've got another tool that can help you track the value of your home, since that's obviously a concern for people. So if you want to access that, that'll be in the notes as well. It just sends you an email, I think about once a month, and kind of helps you see what other properties might be affecting your home value and that sort of thing. Because home values, your assessed value is really based on comparative sales, sales around your area. And of course, with lots of Hanover being rural, well, you might not have a whole lot of comparable sales, which can, I was doing a consultation with somebody earlier this week. They asked me about their home value. I pulled up the recent sales in the area and stuff like that. And because they were in such a rural area, values were kind of all over the place. There was one value that was a little bit under what they were assessed at, and then there was like 2 or 3 other values that were well above where they were assessed at. So that's where it's like, I said, you're probably right in the ballpark, maybe on the higher end of the ballpark. Because the truth is about real estate and real estate values, they're part art and they're part science. Sometimes we don't have enough data, enough science to get really good values. So then they become more art. It's like, okay, do you have a pool, or do you have a fence, or how many acres do you have? And as I tell buyers that I work with a lot of times, that I say, how much is this, or even sellers, it's like, how much is a fence, or how much is this deck worth? And a seller would say, well, the deck cost me $12,000 to put in. And I said, okay, well, it's probably worth what what value we might add to it, what an appraiser might give you on it, is somewhere between $2,000 and $6,000. So which is it, $2,000 or $6,000? And the answer is yes. Because I could find 2 different appraisers and probably get 2 different values. So any other questions you might have about real estate assessments? I just got 12 people here. Maybe people came and went. I'm glad to spend a little bit of time with you. Again, reach out to me. I'm happy to do a consultation. No sales pitch or anything like that. Just look at your home value and see where you might be. See if your assessment seems to be in the ballpark. See if it's worthwhile for you to contest that. But I really think that you would be better off contacting your Board of Supervisors representative. If you don't know how to do that, I'll post the notes in the group. And again, just give me a call. Talk to you later.